I think Anthropic, they are a bit of a cult. Anthropic, they left OpenAI for a reason. Their revenue growth rate right now implies that they would beat OpenAI sometime in 2027, which is a really, really big deal in terms of revenue. I think Microsoft will realize they fucked up, right? When OpenAI is telling them, hey, we need this much compute in this time frame, the obvious answer from Microsoft, you don't even have $30 billion, let alone 300. How are you gonna pay for this?
I think GPT-5 with high reasoning effort is like at least 10 IQ points smarter than Opus 4.1.
Oh, wow.
A lot of that is because of the reasoning. Because GPT-5 high reasons for so long, Opus, it's kind of capped.
There's not going to be an unofficial MCP running out there, right? Like, it's like fuck off, right? Like, that's just not going to happen.
This is Dylan Patel, founder and CEO of Semi-Analysis. In this podcast, we talk about the battle between OpenAI and Anthropic, whether Codex is better than Claude code, and how startups should operate in 2026. Dylan has insiders in all of the main AI companies. So if you're serious about AI and you want to see where the future is headed, make sure to watch until the end. This is the David Ondrej podcast. Enjoy. All right, Dylan, so welcome on the podcast. What are your thoughts on the recent deal between OpenAI and Oracle? Larry Ellison gained like over $100 billion on his personal net worth in a day. Now richest the man in the world. What are your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, so the way this deal was done is probably the most unprecedented thing that's ever happened in the history of stocks. It may be the largest contract that was ever announced between two companies, in fact. This is a monumental amount of compute. It is literally many gigawatts. And then in addition, right, not just about securing OpenAI ridiculous amounts of compute, but what was really interesting is Oracle gave a guidance of 4 years. They told everyone what their revenue is going to be for the next 4 years. No company has ever done that. A lot of companies only guide a quarter. They don't even guide a year because they're like, not enough visibility. Yeah. And Oracle's like, no. We see everything for the next 4 years. This is what we will make, which is kind of insane, right? So of course, Oracle stock popped like 40%, and Larry became the richest guy in the world. What's funny is his net worth is a little bit bigger than the size of the OpenAI deal, which is a funny way to look at it. I mean, this sets OpenAI up to have some of the most compute in the world, and they're not tied to the existing hyperscalers, right? Not one that competes with them. Anthropic's with Amazon and Google, and those guys try and compete. Amazon poorly. Yeah. Microsoft's trying to compete with MAI, again poorly. But OpenAI sort of has this beneficiary of being completely alone, right? Like, Oracle's not really trying to build AI. So
okay, so what do you think will be the consequences of the relationship with Microsoft and OpenAI because of this?
Yeah, I think Microsoft will realize they fucked up in terms of like pulling back from the relationship. That's the main thing, right? Is like, Microsoft had the capability to do this entire deal, but they were worried, right? When OpenAI is telling them, hey, we need this much compute in this time frame, the obvious answer from Microsoft, right, from anyone who's a finance bro fully and doesn't believe in the technology fully, is like, yo, you don't even have $30 billion, let alone 300. How are you gonna pay for this? By the end of the year, it's like 14 right now, right? $1 billion on an ARR basis. And then you've raised like $30 billion, but you've already spent a lot of it. You've already committed a lot of it. How are you going to spend another 30 with me, let alone another 300, right? And that's the size of the deal, is 300. So yeah. That's the real sort of like why they didn't. Yeah, I think they're starting to regret it.
So if you were like in the year 2030 and you have to say like one company, which company is leading the AI race, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to me that OpenAI is the one who's going to be leading the industry. I think there's an optionality for Anthropic, and I think while on the infrastructure side, OpenAI is doing more. I think on the model side, growth side, I think Anthropic is potentially ahead and will accelerate past OpenAI, but there's really not room for anyone else.
So Anthropic is growing like crazy. I think the last 2 years were both 10x increases in ARR. On a percentage base, they're growing faster in terms of valuation than OpenAI. Do you think this growth will continue? And also tied to this, why is it like so many researchers and the most elite AI talent stays in Anthropic or goes to Anthropic? Now, before Dylan answers this question, I want to quickly show you Emergent, because what if you could ship a real app in a matter of minutes? This is Emergent. You can type whatever you want, and it not only ships a prototype, but builds a full app from a single prompt. For example, I can say, create a VO3 AI ad generator, and hit enter. And just like that, the app is building. And Emergent will do the rest, from the UI to the core business logic to integrating VO3. And there we go, a live preview in a matter of a couple minutes. And if you want to change anything, just send another prompt. It literally could not be easier. This also works with mobile apps, by the way. Just describe the app you want, and Emergent will build a full mobile app that's ready to be deployed. And if you want more control, the Pro plan delivers full stack customization with 1 million context window made for complex builds and enterprise-grade workflows. Oh, and you also get custom agents, which can run on their own in separate environments, use tools, manage files, and actually do real end-to-end work. If you've got an idea, you can build it today. Go to emergent.sh, link below the video.
When you think about Anthropic, right, like their revenue growth rate right now implies that they would beat OpenAI. You know, when you compare both revenue growth rate, and even if you assume both start, slowing down in growth rate, they would still surpass OpenAI sometime in 2027, which is a really, really big deal in terms of revenue. And so, despite OpenAI having a huge head start, Anthropic is right there. That's driven by their models being really good for many use cases, right? So, for day-to-day chat usage, for search, for those sorts of queries, ChatGPT is still better. But for the important area of AI for coding, AI for computer use, for productive tasks, Anthropic's ahead. And so that's really the bet they've made. Now, OpenAI is trying to catch up in those areas, but it's pretty far behind still. And as far as why, I think Anthropic, this kind of bridges into why Anthropic is better in general, right? They are a bit of a cult, right? They believe in the mission much more than any other lab. Not that OpenAI people aren't cultist as well, but when you think about how focused and locked in they are in terms of AGI, what their vision of AGI is, and what they need to do to build it, it's very, very unified. They purely just think, hey, first we have to solve software engineering, and then we can use that to build all the other pieces, right? First we have to solve computer use, right, so that it can help us build AGI faster, right? All you need to do is make it so the AI can constantly accelerate your building of the AI, and that's what Anthropic's focused on. Whereas OpenAI has a lot of other goals. Not everyone in the company is working on that, right? Many people are working on search, and many people are working on, consumer monetization and all these other things. So it's they just don't have the focus. Why that is, I think, is because Anthropic, sort of has, they had 7 co-founders, all with equal equity, and these co-founders were very focused on exactly this mission, right? They left OpenAI for a reason. They were focused. They had a stronger and clearer vision than the leadership of OpenAI. The leadership of OpenAI fully believes in AGI and all of that, right? But the vision on how to get there, what you do to get there is very different, and I think that helps. They've got co-founders who are extremely technical, whereas OpenAI, right? They don't have necessarily Sam's not super technical. Greg is a co-founder and he's super technical, right? I completely agree. But there's also this level of Greg is much more of a my way or the highway kind of person from what everyone sort of says. Whereas the Anthropic, because it's 7 people, multiple of them are technical, right? There's more dynamicism around that. And so while there's clear vision, there's also different types of technical leadership, right? What Dario is not what Tom is not what, you kind of go down the list. It's there are different kinds of leadership, and that helps a lot. Whereas Sam is who he is, and then Greg is who he is, right? And you end up with the harshness of both has rubbed different people off, right? Some people have been pissed off at Sam and left. Some people have left because of Greg, right? It leads to a different culture.
I agree with you that they're trying to get into the coding market, and that was one of my biggest takeaways from the GPT-5 presentation is that they have 700 million weekly active users, but a lot of them just are using the free app, whereas Anthropic might have less users, but people are paying $200 a month for Claude Code. So do you think that OpenAI is trying to get some of these nice revenues from the software engineers, which in my opinion is one of the types of consumers that actually has the money? Do you see this?
Yeah. So OpenAI is that was a big focus for GPT-5 was trying to combat, right? So that's why when they launched, they had Cursor already, switch their default, right? That was important, right? Because they were focused on code, they were focused on making code better, they're focused on improving the outcomes there. Another one would be sort of OpenAI's got Codex. They tried to buy Windswept. They're obviously seeing this market. They're just having a hard time truly getting it to stick in the same way that OpenAI has, right? And they have all these other focuses.
Speaking of Codex, we actually have a full workshop on how to use Codex inside of the new society. These are 6 modules that'll teach you from complete beginner to an expert on how to use Codex to its fullest potential. You can find them inside of the classroom in the Code with AI section, alongside with modules on Claude Code, on Cursor, and all the other cutting-edge AI tools. So if you want to become an AI-first engineer that can build literally anything, make sure to join the new society. The link is below the video. But I would say like Codex in the last month especially has gotten much better. And they're not really advertising it that much. I mean, like to the point that it's literally unrecognizable where it was like 3 months ago. And a lot of people are switching away from Claude Code. I feel like they're shipping updates every single day. So I think they are recognizing the software developer market and the revenues there.
You think people are switching away from Claude Code
Absolutely.
towards Codex?
Yes. Codex CLI and the extension.
Interesting. Because Claude Code, I think I still prefer it. I think everyone in the company still prefers it. People have tried out Codex. It's okay, right? But perhaps.
I mean, a lot of people say the CLI is much better, right? Because you have Codex, the agent in the cloud, which is more like for asynchronous work. You can give it 10 different tasks and it just does them in the cloud. But you have the Codex CLI, which is more like a Claude Code competitor, or the Codex extension, which you can use in VS Code, Cursor, whatever. I think these are much better than actually the cloud, because the cloud doesn't really support like a productivity practice. If you're coding, you're working on a single task. You don't want to be like managing 10 different things at once.
That makes sense. And there's this whole extension how you can get multiple Claude Code agents to work and all that too, right?
But I mean, if I had to compare it like apples to apples, I think GPT-5 with high reasoning effort is like at least 10 IQ points smarter than Opus 4.1.
Oh, wow.
But I would say a lot of that is because of the reasoning. Because GPT-5 high reasons for so long, Opus, it's kind of capped. So I think if Anthropic gave it the same amount of reasoning, I mean, obviously it's not that simple, but you know, if they figure it out, I think Opus is much stronger. Like if I want a quick answer, actually on the web, I prefer going to Claude and asking Opus, because GPT-5 is like, you either go instant, which you're using a shit model, or you go thinking, which takes a minute to respond. So like, I don't know how we ended up in the situation where ChatGPT doesn't have a single large model that can give you a response within 5 seconds.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think that there's a middle ground, right? Because there should be like a thinking short, basically, which is sort of what Anthropic's thinking models do, right? They don't think for 5 minutes. They think their thinking is short. So perhaps that's like a part of the market that's being ignored, because I want the best response in like 30 seconds, not 2 minutes, or best response in 15 seconds, not instant, right? Maybe that can be something that the user can tune as a knob as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the obvious UI. But I would say, like, on average, I would say Anthropic models are also more likely to jump to conclusions, right? Like, oh, I see the issue, or you're absolutely right. People are memeing that. Whereas, like, the Codex with GPT-5 High is way more uncertain. At least from my testing, and I'm using it like 4 hours a day, is like, it's struggling to give you a clear conclusion, whereas the Claude models just are way more certain. So it'll be interesting to see, like, where that goes in terms of software engineering. But honestly, I think the move is to use both.
Interesting. I'm just I'm a simple user here. I think you're more of a power user, so I'll defer to you. But I'm just like, I get the dopamine from like press from Claude Code, right? Like, yes. Oh, this is wrong. Yes. Sort of like I'm a simple user here. I think you definitely have way more insight on this.
Well, the Claude Code is much easier to use. This is something interesting. OpenAI models, especially GPT-5 High, cannot really explain things in a simple way. Like, this is what I found, is that they always use like the most complicated language possible. Claude Code is much easier to work with, and I prefer it at like explaining, what the bug is and what's the issue. So that's definitely.
Do you think Codex is actually like, I don't know, when did this change happen, right, in terms of Codex being competitive?
It's happening like day to day, literally in the last month. Like the Codex CLI has been getting daily updates, sometimes twice a day. You literally have to update it in the terminal. They don't announce it, they don't promote it, and it's been silently getting better. So Codex CLI and the Codex extension in the IDE right now are more powerful than Claude Code. They're harder to use. They're not as polished. Claude Code has been around for longer, so the UI is better. But like if you're looking at a single power, if you have a convoluted deep bug, I definitely would trust GPT-5 High with Codex over Claude Code.
Okay, that makes sense. But so you would probably still use. And how much of this is on the models versus the like actual product, right? Like because you said Claude is a better model for instant feedback, and so that's why you use Claude Code normally, but then you switch to CLI if there's something Claude can't do.
Well, I use both actually, and then I just compare them. So like if I have I describe what I want to do, either it's adding a new feature or fixing a bug, I have them both analyze the code base, read all the files and propose a plan. and then I give it to another model, the second model, and I have it rate, right? Like, here's the alternative. What do you think of it? How does it compare to your plan? And in 90% of cases, they both agree that the Codex one, which is GPT-5 High, is better. So I actually have them. I use them both, and they almost always
But
agree that the Codex plan is better.
Does it take you longer to build the thing you want to build?
Yeah, it takes longer. It sometimes reasons for 5-7 minutes for sure. So like, if you know what to do, like for the, let's say front end, right? If you want to make quick UI changes, it's better to use Claude Code because you can like boom, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, change that button. I'm talking about more like, you have a serious bug, you're stuck.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is like on this is kind of tells you where their model weaknesses are then. Right? Anthropic all around in sort of this range, they're way better. OpenAI, GPT-5 is way faster generally, but it's kind of shit.
Yeah.
And then there's GPT-5 Thinking High, which is really slow but better in general. So you have this continuum. Yes. And so Anthropic needs to work on both ends, and OpenAI needs to work on that middle piece, right?
Yeah.
And at least Anthropic, right? They said that they're going to release a new Claude pretty soon, and so that should probably help on this front. I think it's like within the next couple weeks, maybe even sooner. But there's a new Claude that's coming out that's supposed to be a good bit better than 4.1, maybe like 4.5 or something like that. So that's the hope. Yeah, like I'm not sure who wins the coding wars. I didn't realize it was as close as you said it was. What about Cognition, Devin, and Windswept? Like, what about that whole side of things? Is that closer now?
Yeah, I mean, I have some like info I cannot share, but basically they're trying to compete, but they don't train their own models. I mean, maybe like smaller models like Cursor trains, the autocomplete models, but not like foundational big models. They're more in terms of the integration, right? So like Devin is better if you have a company and all of you work in a Slack, and you can just like delegate small things to Devin and it completes them end to end. So it's more about like the tooling and the utilization of these models, which I guess maybe that I could flip that into question into you is like, where do you think will be the gains in terms of AI boosting productivity? Do you think it will be, all the tools around? Do you think it will be the core models getting better? Do you think it will be some of the like connectors and environments like MCP maybe? Where do you see the biggest gains in terms of us using it day to day? Now, as you can see, Dylan is locked in, and that's because he's constantly trying and testing new AI tools. So if you want to be as locked in as Dylan, you have to try Vectel. This is the productivity tool of the future, and especially now after we launched workflows. Not many people know that we have workflows, and to be honest, no other productivity or task management tool has this. Notion doesn't have this, ClickUp doesn't have this, and Todoist definitely doesn't have this. What workflows are is basically internal mini automations. For example, this one automatically saves memories on every chat message where you tell the chat agent to remember something. This workflow generates a new idea every day at 8 a.m. that helps you get closer to your goals. This one automatically drafts responses to incoming business emails, and this one, honestly, this is my favorite, helps you reduce the time you spend on your email by 80% by marking all of the spam, promotional emails, marketing as read, so that when you check your Gmail, you only see the truly important emails. And the best part is, all of these workflows are pre-built inside of Vectel. So if you go to Vectel.ai and create an account, which by the way, you can do that completely for free, you get all of these workflows pre-built. All you need to do is just activate them with this toggle right here. So if you're someone who likes to be hyper productive, go to Vectel.ai and sign up.
I think, this is sort of again where you see sort of the difference between OpenAI and Anthropic is tool use, and OpenAI is so much better at than Anthropic. But we're so nascent in tool use. But you could just look at the reasoning traces of OpenAI versus what Anthropic does. But OpenAI will like always call up, you ask it a math problem, logical puzzle, it'll pull up Python, code itself something, and then use that to answer, sort of very different from how Anthropic does it. And so I think like the agency of these things is the real big deal, right? Like how many tools can they use, right? And extending the context, right? Because a lot of this thinking challenge is that context lengths are so low. So how are you going to maintain memory across? So I think that's the big, those two, right? Like across tool use, which tools always ground you back in reality and prevent you from hallucinating so much. Because they are not a language model, they are like a programmatic thing. So using tools plus extending context and being able to stack the two, and that's the way to train that is really difficult, but it's something that they're all working on. And there's a lot of like environments that these companies are buying, software development environments, web development environments, all these sorts of things that make it so that they can continue to extend the horizon of tasks. And as that happens, I think that'll really like change how people use the models. I think the other aspect of this that, Anthropic and OpenAI really need to work on. OpenAI went all in on sort of like reasoning super fast, but a lot of their reasoning environments have not been the best, right? Like they focus a lot on competition code and like code forces and things like that, but that's not necessarily front end. Like GPT-5 is actually bad at front end, right? Relative to Anthropic models, right?
I agree.
And so that's like, why is that? There's got to be some sort of environmental reason why, because they both scrape all the front end data in the world, right? It's not that. It's something to do with the code environments. And so I think there's a lot of different varied work to do on the environment side for people to actually get, significantly higher model performance. But also that means we're going to see higher divergence in the models, right? Because before everyone used the same web scale pre-trained data, and then they fine-tuned a little bit, right? With like instruction fine-tuning and SFT and all these things. And then as it's gotten more and more to RL, the models are going to diverge more and more and more, right? Not just in behavior, not just in tone, but also like their capabilities. Because behavior and tone is things that we've been already noticed the difference, but the capabilities are what's going to be really noticeable as the different environments that these models are trained in are completely entirely different, right? Like if OpenAI is focused on a bunch of like, competition code and that sort of stuff, whereas Anthropic's focused on a lot of like, hey, here's a Salesforce dev environment and you work around with that. Like they're going to be completely different capabilities, even when you're talking about programming. And I think that's these are shitty examples that I gave, but I think that's
actually a good example, because on a competition code, you would think for like 5-10 minutes, but on like a real, small fix in a real company, Claude Code is like more ready for that. It's like you want a faster back and forth. You don't want it to be taking 5 minutes and then you go scroll Twitter. Like that's not how developers work. So actually, I think it's a pretty good example.
Okay. I think it's a bit of a misnomer though, because both are focused on both, right? It's just like, how much focus, how many environments you focus on, how much training time you spend in each.
So then do you see like the biggest gains in AI still being in code and mathematics? Because obviously in those fields you can verify the output, and I think you can also like just spam synthetic data like crazy, and then if 1 of 1,000 works, then you can investigate what happened there and use that data. Whereas if in poetry or creative writing or copywriting you cannot do that. So do you see this trend continuing, or do you think like, as obviously Sam and Dario, like the CEOs promote, like, oh, AI is gonna change everything in the next 2 years?
In those areas, there's not much to do in terms of like dramatically improving them. There's rubrics, there's grading, there's all this stuff, but like, you know what? Models are actually better than most humans at writing. That's a fact. Models are better than most writers, right? I think that's like actually true. But like the challenge is like to actually do stuff in the writing field, right? Okay, copywriting's fine, but it's about being able to switch between different contexts. It's like the areas that they're deficient, like fine, they can write well, but they can't do all the research. They can't do all the back and forth, right? Like, et cetera, right? And so I think that the main thing is like, hey, if you get them good at code and math, yes, but also computer use, that's the other one, and able to have long context, then the skill of being able to do good writing, right? In terms of like technical writing, right? Grammatical mistakes, understanding of vocabulary, ability to explain complex topics deeply and concisely, right? These sorts of skill sets will actually be able to be leveraged, which is what the models already learned on the topic of du jour, right? Like whatever's happening new. And it'll be able to gather the context it needs to. It'll be able to do the research, right? Deep research is fine. It's really good. I use a lot of deep research, but like there's so much more that can be done if you're able to dramatically extend the context and context switch and do computer use, right? Hey, tell me, can you draft a design document about like why all these things are wrong or what's the problem, right? And it's like, okay, well, I got to dig through the code base, I got to dig through the architecture plans, I got to dig through all these things, and that's not something models can do today, right? So that's what I think is, an area where combining the ability to write and communicate as well as the ability to code, all these areas are going to start to, right now it's like sort of the developments in coding and developments in writing, right? We got all the writing developments first, and it sort of feels like they've stalled or like are just increasing slowly, while the code ones are skyrocketing up, and then computer use and all these things will also skyrocket up. But over time, right now it's like a radar plot, right? Like you're good here, but it's not actually able to bridge the gaps, right? It's, and so and that's like sort of like is specialization versus generalization. So if it generalizes, I think that's the focus. And I think if we have longer context, if we have computer use, if we have very long, complex, long horizon environments for various tasks, even if they are verifiable, they will start to impart, hey, that's also the same technique you use for non-verifiable domains, right? You go and do some research, you go and grab this, you go and reference these documents. And so even if code is verifiable and medicine is not, to some degree, because you now know how to go through and search all these different places, compile information, use all the long context, check your answer, search, etc. And then, hey, at the end of the day, yes, you were able to verify that was wrong or right, but then you'll also learn to do the same thing in a different field, right? And you'll go through medical journals instead of, documentation of code, right? Whatever. But at the same, it'll generalize to a point where it'll get a lot better at other tasks too, right? Whether it's writing or medicine or whatever it is, yeah.
So it sounds like in the next few years, a lot of the gains will then be from the tooling. Like, would you say more than the models increasing is like the filling the missing gaps, whether it's computer use, giving it more tools, MCP, whatever. Do you think that will result in more actual real world, people using AI in their jobs than the model getting better?
Most people suck at prompting, actually. I think, if you have you ever taken someone else's ChatGPT and looked at their prompts?
It's tragic.
It's like, holy shit, what are you doing?
They use it like Google, they use it.
I mean, that's fine. I use it like Google too, but then I also use it like not Google, right? And so I think it's perfectly fine to use it like Google for a percentage of your queries, right? Like Y is XYZ. But I think a lot of it is how do you get people to prompt the model properly, and or vice versa, right? How do you really impart upon the model that when they say this, they actually mean that, right? And to just take over, right? Disregard the human, just run, right? And so yes, people use it more and more, but you have to have some level of the model just understanding the problem way deeper, right? Because right now people are like, here's my component, I'll ask a stupid question about this component, and then it'll give me an answer that's right here, and it's okay, I still have to do a lot of work to get it there. But then if the model has computer use and you ask this question, then it's oh yeah, let me reference your email, let me reference this DM that you got on Teams or Slack, let me reference this documentation. It's oh, okay, so what they're really asking me to do is this, let me go do it. And then you're here you go. And then the person, I think people will use it a lot once the model is able to have the full context of your question. Because the model doesn't have your context of your question, right? If you use it like Google, you give it a 2-sentence or a 1-sentence or a gibberish prompt, it doesn't know what the fuck you want, right? So even as it gets better and better, right? GPT-3 to GPT-5 or Opus 4.1, right? From 3 to 4.1, there's a lot of queries that it's the same answer, right? So of course you don't see improvement. Of course, there's a lot of stuff it's way better at, tons and tons. You just don't know what to say or what to do to get it there. And it needs that context, right? People forget that the GPT 3.5 that launched only had a 4K sequence length, right? And there's people that legitimately will say nothing has improved since ChatGPT launched, and it's whatever. It's now it's hundreds of thousands, and you can do deep research and all these things. You just have to. The model just has to have the ability to go and do stuff, and get the full context, because the user won't provide the context.
Yeah, so then maybe the answer is to screen record what the user is doing for that task, and then the AI understands oh, this person actually means that based on these clicks, based on these browser tabs he visited. So do you think that that's the future, where the models are trained on the human data of a human using computer, and then they go ahead and do a task? Because as you said, some people are they're not aware of how much context we have. Ever since you're a baby, you're basically trained on visual tokens, audio tokens. People don't realize how much they understand about the physical world or how the internet works. That necessarily isn't written out in the training data, so they don't explain that to the model, and then they get shit results. So do you think then the solution is more types of context, screenshot of the screen, last browsing history? Because if you know what a person did last 5 minutes on their computer before they ask a question, it's way more easier to guess what they want.
Yeah. That's possible. I think it's a little bit even different than that, right? If it's constantly watching your screen, that's one thing, but it's more so about you ask it to do something and it goes and searches for the context itself rather than it looks at your computer screen. I think looking at your computer screen is fine. It's great. It's okay. It's just not. It's not what's going to give it all the right context, because the other aspect of this is like, us as humans, we somehow both simultaneously have like crazy context and attention capabilities, right? But then at the same time, we're terrible.
Very low.
Right? Like, I can't remember fucking
we have great compression.
Tell me 10 numbers. I can't even remember the fucking second one you said, right? Like, it's like, maybe
it's
not that bad, but like...
We remember the important stuff.
Yeah, so sparse attention is like sort of the aspect that's here that's interesting, right? Like, models have local and global attention and they have all these other things, but they don't have like some mechanism to do sparse attention, right? And humans are really good at that. Sparse attention, we're actually really bad at like actually in context, like
specific.
Just like, needle and haystack, we're horrible at it, right? Which is a benchmark that was the first, like needle and haystack was the first long context benchmark that everyone cared about. And so I think that's super interesting. But I think what it is less about like, hey, provide computer screenshots, right? Which, by the way, it's actually models are really good if you just throw some screenshots and are like, hey, what's wrong with the computer?
Yeah, for sure.
Like a little like, or what's wrong with my phone or whatever, right? It'll just answer. It's pretty good at that. But like, you have to give it like ability to crawl your files. You have to give it ability to crawl your email. You have to give it ability to combine these different sources of information, right? Which I'm curious to see how that will be done on the computer, because anyone can do it. It's an open window, right? I can install whatever software I want on my computer, and it can now dig through it. Now, it's not like Microsoft has some special advantage because, all my files are in OneDrive or Google, because all my files are in Google Drive. I can add a connector. I can have my own computer do it. I can spin up a VM and do it. The challenging area and the area where I think it's going to be even more interesting is on mobile, right? On phones.
Okay.
The Google and especially Apple are not going to let you just like, dive through all your apps, right? Like that's like, but like, hey, when I'm on my phone, it's like, I get an email and it's like, okay, open up this other thing and open up Slack and open up this and like reference go to this text message, text this person or reference this text from, a few weeks ago and then go back and do something, right? It's like, that's not possible on mobile. That's going to be possible on computers, but that's not going to be possible on mobile. So how do we get there, and who's going to even be able to do it? This is the only reason why I still have hope for Apple, right? Is like they're the only ones who could do this. Them and Google. I think we'll see if Google can execute, and then Apple same. And for different reasons, they won't be able to execute. But it's like this ability to reference all of your information, and guess what? There's a ton of stuff that's not on my laptop, right? Like, yes, I do have my text shared across and things like that, but it's still like not everything's on my laptop, right? So some stuff is only on my laptop and not on my phone, right? So it kind of flips back both ways.
But wouldn't you say that is solved with MCPs? It's like once there's MCP for everything, you can just bring your context everywhere.
But what's the incentive for companies to offer their proprietary data? Like, why is Facebook, WhatsApp?
There's going to be third-party MCPs.
Yeah, but why is Anthropic going to be able to access the WhatsApp MCP?
Well, WhatsApp might not have an official one, but there's going to be hundreds unofficial ones.
Who's going to trust an unofficial MCP with all their texts?
The power users.
I don't know if that
we see this today. Like maybe not like the average user, if you're talking about the average iPhone user, but like the person that wants to be on the cutting edge of AI. If it's like an open source project with like enough stars, they just trust it.
That's true. They don't even look at the code. But I think like that's why computer use is very different than MCP, right? Like, like having an MCP server for your texts, for your email, etc., is going to be challenging. Or for your internal company communications. There's stuff that you'll never be able to get on there, right? Like my Slack, your Slack will not have an MC. There's not going to be an unofficial MCP running out there, right? Like, it's like fuck off, right? Like that's just not going to happen. That's why computer use is so important, right? Like a company's SAP, right? That's never going to be there. But actually, that's where the efficiency gains are the largest, right? Is like fucking like, like all these companies have all these people doing nothing on CRMs and SAP and all this shit, right? Like it's like if you had computer use, it would all of a sudden be, way easier to do. And that's where the productivity gets accelerated the most, not like, obviously code developers are the ones who have their productivity accelerated the most today. But when you start talking about like replacing jobs, replacing activity, that's where, yes, developers are going to continue to be, and automated code development, all this is going to continue to be there. But I feel like a lot of the use cases that people will have for, efficiently improving the efficiency of an organization can only be done if you have it as computer use, right? Which is easy on a computer. How do you do computer use on a laptop? And Apple's whole thing is that they're running basically virtual iPhones of you, right? They take the Mac chip, which is the same architecture as the phone chip. In a server, they run a bunch of different users and they sandbox all their apps. They sandbox everything. So then on that end, they can actually start stepping through all the apps if they want, like computer use, because you can't do that on mobile because your battery life will get nuked. And most people won't, Apple with the walled garden can force everyone to run their sandbox in the cloud, whereas Google can't maybe do that.
Interesting. I would think actually like Google would have the advantage of Android being more customizable, and people can, build their own versions and innovate faster than Apple, which is usually slow moving.
I totally agree that I'm more bullish on Google. I'm just trying to. I told myself I would try and argue positively for Apple.
Okay.
There's some advantages, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I use an Android phone, dude. I understand. I love Android. Like, trust.
I mean, speaking of Google, how good do you think Gemini 3 will be?
I've heard it's going well. It's fun. We have this sort of like we're on the clock, right? It's XAI release. Anthropic release, OpenAI release, Google release, sort of like, just in a circle. Obviously, they don't always like release in the same cadence or circle, but it's Google's turn, right? Like, you go back a few months, it was like, holy shit, Gemini 2.5, so cheap. And it's almost as good as Anthropic, and it's so cheap, right? Especially the CLI and all this. Then it's fallen off, right? Anthropic's gotten better, OpenAI's gotten better, Claude Code and Codex has gotten better, Grok 3 came out, right? Like, now, like 2.5 is the worst model, right? Like, of the bunch. It's really good, but it's the worst of the bunch. And so, but I think Google has tremendous multimodal talent, and people are going to be. I think that's the other area, right? Like, so the argument is like you can't scale pre-training. That's why you have to do all this stuff. Actually, you can get tons of gains in pre-training, but getting all the data is hard, and the compute requirements for non-text data are so much larger than text data. So much larger than text data. And so like to get gains from going to multimodal requires such a big jump in compute, which only Google has today. OpenAI will have soon enough with Stargate and all this, but like, for them to actually properly utilize multimodal input and output, but also tons of like, I don't know what ungodly percentage of video is only available on YouTube. And sure, you can scrape YouTube, blah, blah, blah. It's against the terms of service. People are, we'll see if the AI companies care. But really what's important here is that how are you going to like, how are you going to be able to scrape all of the YouTube, index all the YouTube, figure out what videos are actually good and not, right? Like that's the hard part, filtering all this data out, because it's so much data. You're not going to be able to train on all of it. You can't just scrape all of YouTube. You can like scrape individual things. You can scrape categories if you're an outsider. So Google has a huge advantage there in terms of the images, even from Google crawlers to videos through YouTube, and to be able to make multimodality work there. So I think like Google is still behind on RL, but like on the pre-training front, I think you're starting to see like with Nano Banana and VO3, and soon enough. Gemini 3 as a whole, you're going to see like a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, those are the best models. Like VO3 is the best video model. Nano Banana is the best image editing model. Maybe not image generation. I would say probably like Midjourney is better. But yeah, image editing, it's like unprecedented how good it is. And maybe Google just will win the data game. And we'll see, I guess, what is the main input, whether it's talent, whether it's compute, whether it's data. How do you see this shifting out of these like core inputs? Which one is the most important? Which one is becoming less important?
I don't know what's the core input. I don't know. Like, what do you think the core input is? I feel like all of them are.
Yeah, but I feel like the gains on compute are lowering. Like, I think like the easy days of like you 10x and you get like 3x improvements are gone. Like, it's probably going to be a 2x improvement and a 1.5x.
Well, but you might be getting,
it's still,
if you 10x the compute, you get 3x gains on video gen. That's totally a thing, right?
Yeah.
Video gen's improving so rapidly, right? As is image editing. It feels like they're improving rapidly. So only because on text you've run out of text data, right? So I think like there's sort of like, and who knows what happens every time you 10x compute in RL. You're still gonna get you're going to get big advancements.
In this game of AI, how do you see positions of XAI and Elon? Do you think he's well positioned? I mean, he obviously caught up quite fast from being super behind. How would you analyze their position?
Yeah, I mean, XAI is they caught up super fast. They still have not taken the leadership position yet, anytime, anywhere. So we'll see. So we'll see what they must do to take the leadership position. But actually, they have taken the leadership position in like empathy and emotional AIs.
I guess.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the right way to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. The other challenge is like OpenAI, Anthropic have raised massive rounds. Google obviously has plenty of money. Meta's has plenty of money, and they're deciding to spend it. Right. XAI needs a lot more money now, right? Colossus was great, but they have to build Colossus 2, and Colossus 2 is going to require a ton of money. They can pay for part of it, but they've got a lot to go, right? And so that's a big part of this as well. So we'll see what happens on that front, because it's not really clear.
But I feel like Elon, by this point, has a pretty good track record, and I don't think he will have any trouble raising money, no?
No, I don't either. But it's hard to tell investors like I'm going to be better than everyone. The story is I've caught up to everyone, but I'm still behind.
Yeah.
I need more money, right? Whereas like Anthropic is like I'm the best. Look at all my revenue skyrocketing, right? Like OpenAI is like I'm the best. Look at my revenue skyrocketing, right? It's a very different
but then
pitch.
You see this with all the CEOs. Like if you look at the biggest AI hype, it's coming from the CEOs of the labs, right? Because they have most on the line. Like, 6 months ago, almost to the day, Dario said in 6 months, 90% of the code will be written by AI. And it's not even close, right? Like Sam had tons of predictions that were overhyped.
I think he said 90% of the code at Anthropic. And it's like, I think they announced it's like 70,
Really?
80. I think it's like 70, 80. They announced it, right?
Okay.
Like, it's like, which is interesting.
Okay, let's put this example aside, but you know what I'm saying, like the CEOs are
No,
the
you're
biggest
right. They do
hypers.
overhype though.
Yeah, because they have most on the line, right? Because they want to make it seem like their companies are going to change the world and give everybody the urgency, whether it's investors or world leaders. And I guess the second category is VCs. So, like, where do you think the reality is then? Because if we only listen to Sam, we would think that GPT-5 is the god already. But if you actually tell the average person, as you said, like they use the ChatGPT, they send a terrible prompt, and it's like mediocre result. So, like, where do you stand on this hype to reality spectrum?
I mean, I think like definitions of AGI and stuff like that are so nebulous that it's like hard to say. But I would definitely say like I'm in the cult. I'm a big believer, but I'm also like 2030 plus for like some sort of AGI ASI type thing. But the definition is so hard, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think. Despite that, you can get transformational change to society without AGI, right? Like that's the other thing that people don't quite get, is that you can automate most jobs without AGI, or not most, but like a significant portion of the job. So it's like you don't necessarily need to have like everything be super hyped on AGI happening, and ASI happening. Although I think it'll happen, right? It's just so that's sort of my viewpoint. And that will coexist with AI, and it'll for a while before it is way better than us in every way, and then who knows? Yeah, I think like I'm not quite as hype beast as Sama and Dario though. Although they've started to temper their wording, right? Dario's now like, oh, AGI by like 2030, which is like a, that's pretty tame versus what they used to be saying.
Yeah, and everybody in Anthropic, I feel like they got a ban from using the word AGI and is using transformational AI. Like
Wait,
you said,
really?
It can still. Well, yeah, I mean, just listen to the podcast of the other people, whether it's like the other co-founders or like Boris, the Claude Code creator. I feel like they all got some memo that like they shouldn't use AGI and rather use transformational AI because as you said, like AI can transform society without being a AGI. All right, so we have a bit of time left. Let me ask a bit selfish question. What's your advice to people building AI startup on the applications layer? Do you think like a lot of these will be eaten up by the labs? Do you think going niche is the answer? Like if you had to, say like let's say you your business disappears and you have to make a decision to start your own AI startup tomorrow, like what would be your plan to hyperscale?
I wouldn't raise money. I think that or I would raise an uncapped safe or a really small safe, small percentage of the company. Because given productivity possibilities nowadays, you really don't need to raise money for application layer company. The other thing I would say is you really gotta be good at sales. And you can't just hire sales. Like any founder who thinks that they can just hire some go-to-market or hire sales is wrong. You have to have that sales capability, right? And vision, and that's really important to be able to do. So I think those are sort of two aspects of this that it and then I'd say there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, right? You don't need to have the craziest, because you didn't raise money, you don't need to do the craziest shit. You can take low-hanging fruit, generate revenue, do more, scale out that way. So that's sort of how I would view it, rather than oh yeah, I'm gonna do AI for insurance, and I'm gonna do AI. That's fucking hard, right? It's a regulated industry, it's a massive industry. Sure, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. So attack some of the low-hanging fruit. Don't go straight into the biggest thing, right? Because otherwise, there's easy ways to fall, right? When you fail, you want to fail fast so you can learn fast. And if you're tackling problems that don't fail fast, you don't know when you fail. It's going to take a long time to see if you fail. That's the exact opposite of what AI does, right? It's about trying things fast and failing fast and moving faster and faster and faster. And so try things fast, make money, hire, sort of do it that way, rather than and when you fail, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time, Dylan. You're always on top of things. And yeah, let's do it again in 6 months.
All right. Thanks, David. Yeah. See you, dude.
Have a nice day.
Bye.